Welcome to the Patient Partner Innovation Community Podcast, a podcast created to inform patients, families, and caregivers about important health transformation topics. Since the 2001 Crossing the Quality Chasm report by the Institute of Medicine, our nation's healthcare system has recognized its need to improve quality of care by way of 6 important aims that make healthcare safe, efficient, effective, patient-centered, timely, and equitable. But we cannot hope to cross this chasm and achieve these aims until we make fundamental changes to the whole healthcare system. All levels of this work require dramatic improvements from the patient's experience. So this podcast is dedicated to you, the voices most underutilized resource in healthcare, our patients' voices. Welcome, and we hope you enjoy the Patient Partner Innovation Community Podcast.
Hi, I'm Dr. Natasha Washington, President and founder of ATW Health Solutions and sponsor for the Patient Partner Innovation Community. Follow the PPIC community online at atwhealth.com.
Well, hello, I am Dr. Natasha Washington here with Desiree Bradley, my co-host.
Hello.
The Patient Partner Innovation Community Podcast, where we talk with top healthcare leaders, transformation leaders, and patient partners about what's going on in healthcare. Well, today we have Dr. Jeremy Wise here of Rise 25, who has done thousands of interviews with top organizations, and we've flipped the script a little bit. So he's going to be interviewing us. Hey, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me, and I'm excited. I'm always excited to talk to both of you, but especially about this topic. We're going to talk about the theory of change for an equitable patient-centered measurement ecosystem and talk about why you decided to go down this path and who are some of the collaborators with you. Because I know before we jump into it, this episode is brought to you by ATW Health Solutions. And I know ATW Health Solutions, you guys are a Chicago-based healthcare advisory and consulting firm that's gained national recognition for transforming healthcare delivery systems from ordinary to best in class. I know you've worked with Northwestern Medicine, the Department of Defense, and so many more organizations. And if anyone has questions, you can go to atwhealth.com or email them at info@atwhealth.com today to learn more. And so let's start with the, theory of change for an equitable patient-centered measurement ecosystem. How and why did you just start on this journey with this research?
Well, I can, get us kicked off. The short answer is, Dr. Wise, that we realize that equity has not been front and center as it relates to our measurement system. And we also recognize that, given what we've learned as an outgrowth from COVID-19, given what we've learned, that, the importance of disparities, not just in healthcare, but even across other industries that, of course, impact the whole person, like the criminal justice system and what we saw happen with George Floyd. We realize that, there is a real importance around ensuring that as we look to a more patient-centered measurement system, that we are also working to ensure that that system has equity at the top of its priorities. And so that's really the rationale behind the reason why it's important for us to look at equity in patient-centered measurement.
I was looking at, the paper, and it says Black and brown patients continue to experience worse outcomes than white patients, and it was highlighted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Why do you think that is? What happened? What happened with COVID-19 that exposed all this? And tell me about why.
Well, let me just start by saying this has always been there. COVID-19, this didn't just kind of birth with COVID-19. What COVID-19 did was kind of shine a brighter light on this. This has historically been our healthcare system since the beginning of time. Let's just be honest and put it out there. But there's many different factors that, and the paper goes down deep into how we can shift the way we look at patient-centered measurement. But when you think about equity as a whole, there's many different social factors that go into play. There's access issues. If you live in a community and you don't have access to, I would say, good health care, what do you think your outcome is going to be? If you don't have an adequate pharmacy, because granted, if you think about community, pharmacies, depending upon what zip code they're in, they have different medicine classes. So if the patients don't have access to good health care, if they don't have access to, healthy foods, there's so many, we can go in many different directions with this, but you start thinking about, depending upon your zip code, healthcare can be a privilege. So, what was interesting, and I'll kind of jump ahead a little bit when you think about the paper. So we interviewed, I would say, over 40 different stakeholders in a healthcare system. So you think about healthcare leaders, community partners, CBOs, researchers, academia. We talked to everyone that's connected, patient partners that's connected to healthcare. And they all came back with the same rationale about power, right? So what does power play into what drives what we measure in healthcare? And so what drives the power? Funding, the money. And so we heard that from everyone, in different ways. They said it in different ways, but this was like an overarching theme. So, money plays a big role. Who we fund, how we fund, the way we do it, what we measure is all around the funding. And I'll kind of take a pause there. Natasha, what do you think?
So I think the pieces that I would add to it is that our current health system, right? We recognize our current health system really does not have a consistent approach for really measuring disparity. So, oftentimes what we see is whether it's a certain pieces of evidence via research or special projects, right? But as a requirement, our healthcare system, right, is not skilled adequately and does not focus on identifying disparities, right? Mm-hmm. And so because of this, there's also very little accountability as it relates to, disparities or less equitable outcomes. And so, for these reasons, there are major health disparities and racial inequities. So in other words, what I'm meaning to say is that the systems design, right, does not adequately, from a transactional standpoint, really create a healthcare delivery system that is equipped, designed, and then, like I said, has levels of accountability to ensure that we're working towards a progress in eliminating health disparities. And it's for that reason alone, really, that we need to begin to just kind of fundamentally peel it back, to your point, Desiree, and see where the opportunities exist for us to create a more equitable and patient-centered.
The other thing, too, I want to add real quick is because you said something, accountability. There are systems, don't get me wrong, there are systems that are doing some good work, but they're not necessarily collecting adequate data to support what they're doing. There's a huge gap between data collection and an actual boots on the ground work that we're doing. And then we need to kind of bring that together and bring some accountability. So those organizations and health systems that aren't doing the work, that they're required to report those disparity data. But right now, everybody's kind of doing their own thing, and there's no uniform system for them to report that data. Because we know, as we know from our work with CMS, data drives the change. Yeah,
and to Desiree's point, Dr. Wise, so, if we truly are, if we truly have entered into an era where it now, is more front and center, the fact that disparities exist. But to Desiree's point, these types of disparities have always existed, right? But if we've now entered into an era where there seems to be more of a commitment around and an energy around improving things because of what we saw with COVID-19 and continue to see with COVID-19 in particular populations, then we have to take a systems approach, right, to improving all of this. And the way we should begin to look at it is very simply put, to Desiree's point, how are you using key data like race, ethnicity, and language data? How are you using some of the data that also helps us to understand social determinants and how social determinants impact outcomes? How are you, if you're collecting it, right, which most organizations are in some shape, form, or fashion, then how are you using it and how are you optimizing the use of it to ensure that you're producing tools that measure performance and progress? And so, fundamentally, we believe that every single organization in this country has an opportunity to get in the game in a meaningful way as it relates to equity and measurement. And that's really the beginning.
So when you go into an organization, do you help them execute on these things? Like a hospital organization, tell me a little bit more about what you do when you go into an organization. They're like, yes, this is a deep-rooted problem. We need to get better. What's the next step? They call you, and then what happens?
Yeah, so our learning and our training really focuses on helping organizations develop strategies that will get them to this ultimate end. So, for example, we work or have worked with organizations to strategically embed equity into their quality improvement plan, right? So every healthcare organization across the country, has a quality improvement plan or a quality improvement strategy. And we work with those leaders to help them fully integrate the precepts of equity into that work. And then from there, we also do learning and training around some of the specific areas in terms of, like I just talked about, race, ethnicity, and language data, implicit bias training. I mean, there's a number of different types of learnings that we will partner with an organization on to help advance them or to accelerate them in that area. And then we also have a number of partners that we bring into the work that, for example, if you are an organization that is utilizing your race, ethnicity, and language data, but the quality of that data has not been very good. And that is the case with many healthcare organizations, or I should say healthcare delivery organizations. Then there are partners that we bring in that work specifically with your front end business folks, as well as your IT department, to get those systems, nice and perfected in some way. And so there's a number of different strategies, right, that we help organizations deploy. And even to some degree, just bring awareness to the issue. Quite honestly, most organizations do not know where to start when it comes to this particular issue. And so that's really our job, is to help our partner to do that exploratory work.
That's exactly, Dr. Washington, that's exactly what I wrote down on my paper as I'm thinking about when listening to both of you. Is like, how do these organizations even know where to begin? Good thing you do what you do, because there's so many, that's right, like you said, there's so many different pathways and avenues you could take this in. And I want to hear about, you had amazing organizations and some contributors to this. I want to highlight a few and what you learned from them or their contribution. Before I ask you that, about the Kelly Goodsons and John Scanlon and some of the other organizations, any that you want to highlight, I want to encourage people to go to atwhealth.com. You can find their paper on this, The Theory of Change for an Equitable Patient-Centered Measurement Ecosystem that Supports an Advanced Healthcare System. And some of the really tough questions that they answer, we can't go into super deep with everything, but, Desiree, you mentioned this. What is the path to shifting the power of measurement away from entrenched interests within healthcare towards patients, families, and their communities? These are some of the questions. Why are we not seeing the improvement on paper? Just some of the questions that they answer in this paper. So I encourage you to go to their website, check out the full paper, talk about some of the collaboration, the partners, the organizations, and some of the things you learned from them.
Yeah, so obviously there's a plethora of organizations that we had to tap into in order to begin to validate much of what we had created as a framework, and starting with AIR, right, as our collaborating partner who actually brought us into their work on patient-centered measurement. So AIR has been one of the front-running leaders nationally that has continued this conversation around how do we ensure that our measurement system is more patient-centered. I would also encourage our listeners to go and check out AIR's, it's the American Research Institute's .org. So if you go to AIR.org, check out their webpage and the work that they've done. There's a number of case studies that they have created by virtue of their research that demonstrate how we can move to a more patient-centered measurement system. And that's, in essence, saying that we create a measurement system that is meaningful to both providers and to patients as well, right? To patients and caregivers. So that's really important. And then, just really, bringing in other organizations that own measurement, quite frankly, in the United States. So, NCQA, the National Quality Forum, NQF. We talked to a number of measures development companies. So organizations that employ researchers on a regular basis to develop measures. We also talked to Desiree's point, even patient partners in this. So for us, we like to level the playing field to ensure that we have an all-encompassing stakeholder, voice pulled together, in that it be a unified voice, but that it also represents diversity and inclusion. And so there were a number of different, key organizations, national key organizations, PCORI and others that were a part of this development.
I don't want to age either of you. You've been both really experienced and been doing this for decades. But what were some surprises? Were any surprises that came out of this?
I'll be real honest with you. I don't, Desiree, did you find a surprise? And let me say like this. When we were first asked to do this work, we were actually asked to develop a framework, right? We were asked to develop it. And, just because of my personality and because of the way we feel perspectives need to be postured, we did not collectively as an organization feel that we should develop a framework, although we definitely know this as on an expert level, that we should develop a framework that then would be, advanced nationally without really being vetted, right, by others that collaborate with us, right, or by others that are in this space with us. And so the pathway that we decided to take was to go to our peers and go to other subject matter experts and to go to, like I said, the organizations that really do drive, quality measurement or measurement development in healthcare, and partner with those organizations to understand the perspectives of their leaders, to understand the perspectives of their researchers and their measures developers, and then to pull all of that evidence together in a collective way to create a framework. And so that was the way in which we decided to do the work. And so, it was important to us to create something that wasn't just our voice, but was the representation of national voices that understand equity in patient-centered measurement. With all that being said, I can't tell you that I've learned anything new, right? But it was important for us to come together to ensure that we vetted and validated our own thinking, right? And that we weren't pushing perspective, equity, right? That others would say, that seemed a little biased, to me, Natasha. And so I think that, we did it in a respectful and dignified way. And that, like I said, is supported by, those that own this. I don't know, Desiree, did you learn something?
Yeah, I'll say this. I wasn't surprised in the essence of, oh, wow, we heard something that was so different from our aligned thinking. What was surprising to me was that, we were all kind of thinking the same things, but no one was really putting it out there, so to speak. So, we've been doing this work for a minute and we all have internal conversations and we're all kind of like-minded thinkers, but it was nice, I'll say, to hear others in the field had those same concerns and were seeing the same things that we were seeing. And then I also add that when we did the interview, it was really straightforward questions. We did not push our biases on them. So we kind of sent them asked them the questions and took a pause and really let them speak and not really give them any of what my internal feelings and my other co-interviewer on them. So it was really authentic in that space. It's their voice that came through the theory of change.
So let me tell you the one thing, and this is from Desiree's commentary. The one thing that I will say was a shift for me. And that was the fact that as a result of doing this exercise, I became all the more unapologetic about the voice and the way the issue needed to be articulated. What I became very much aware of was the fact that you talked about decades of work, that we've been doing, that in earlier decades, my approach was probably a little bit softer. My delivery was probably a little bit more shaped and postured in a way that I'd say that I'm all, for the most part, always politically correct and polite in my delivery, but I may not have been as apt to use very distinct and curt and to the point, concrete words that, we use to shape this particular piece. And it's part and partial because it's like enough already,
Yeah.
We've been doing this for a very long time. We've been studying this, haven't heard anything new. And so, if you are really game and ready to drive more equitable outcomes, then you will come with an open heart, ready and willing to receive the message. And so that's the one thing that I can say was exercises is the way in which we postured it.
Go bold or go home.
That should be the title of this episode. Go bold or go home. I want to, first of all, thank you both. I want to encourage people to go to atwhealth.com and check out more. You know, what I thought you were going to say, you know, oftentimes surprises come when you know there's an issue. Sometimes when you look under the hood, you sometimes discover it's worse than we thought. And there's some amazing organizations, including yourself, that helped. Like you said, you brought the Duke Center for Health Policy, Blue Cross Blue Shield. There's so many people and organizations that you gather like a wide breadth of feedback on for this. So I want to thank you all for doing this and taking the time to do this deep and answering and going into some of these tough questions that plague the healthcare system. So thank you both. And go to atwhealth.com. Are there any last final words from either of you?
Well, the one thing that I'll say in parting is that we have a lot of work, you know, ahead of us in order to, move our future state of healthcare delivery in a manner that it is more patient-centered and both more equitable. And so this work, you know, is, you know, it's work over the long run. This is not, you know, just a paper and we think that, you know, we can, you know, create a 3 or 5 year plan around it. And, you know, it kind of takes care of itself. This is something, you know, that will require, even more decades of work to more correctly, ensure that it's implemented. And so, I'm just hopeful that, the hype around equity does not diminish, over the next year or even couple of years as we get more controls around COVID and the pandemic, and that people do see the issue for its long-term impact on particular populations and are ready and willing to make the investments towards, a better American healthcare delivery system.
Thank you, Dr. Washington.
Well,
thank you, Desiree. Thank you to also Ellen Schultz, Haladura, and Karen Frazier. I think co-authored it with you. Desiree, any last words?
Natasha said it best. It is a commitment, and give us a call. Let's get working.
Thanks, everyone. Check out atwhealth.com and to learn more. And thank you all.
Follow the PPIC community online at atwhealth.com.